What's up, everybody? My name is Alscott Worrell, and welcome to the Transplants Aftershow. I'm co-creator, and I also play Chad Cohen in the series.
My name is Rodney Hawkins Jr. I'm a co-creator, and I play Dion Harrison.
I'm AJ Lovelace. I am the director of the pilot and the cinematographer for the first half of this season, as well as playing Brandon Big.
Nice. So, episode 1, a lot happened.
Especially in the beginning.
Literally starting with a bang.
The sex scene.
Yeah, listen, sex scenes are very taboo in a lot of gay content. People are always like, not just in gay content, I've seen like threads where people are like, sex scenes aren't necessary unless they move plot along. Some people just don't like them at all. I'm a fan if they move the plot along, and I feel like considering the foundation of where the story came from, as well as where we'll see the character goes, it definitely made sense, so,
Yeah, no, definitely. Me and Alscott decided to put it into the story because, as he said, it would serve purpose. And one day we were working on another project, and I started to tell this joke.
I don't know if it was a joke.
Well, I laughed.
It was a story that made you laugh.
Yeah. And it was about, the trade. You guys will see the first episode, you'll get it. But yeah, and then we were just like, that would be like really funny in the show, and then we just started writing, and Transplants was born. So.
The fact that that actually happened to you, I think, is always what's so interesting, especially in a writer's room, is when real stories inform the stories that the characters will be telling. And when I read that, I was like, oh, we're just getting right into it. No holds bar. And I was very excited about that. And I think one of the things that was really exciting too is the level of authenticity we could all bring to this story, but specifically that sex scene, because to your point, like, I feel like, especially with sex scenes, the placement feels false a lot of times, to be very honest. Like, it feels false, it feels disingenuous, and as queer identifying people, when you see that, it makes you kind of go, they're still shy about telling our stories. And what I enjoyed is being able to take something that is very personal, right? Like, you had to really literally bear all at the top of the show. Like, that's how people get introduced to the story. And your grace and willingness to be so open and vulnerable, I thoroughly appreciate that, as I told you then and I'm telling you again now. But what I love about being able to direct that scene in particular was there was a lot of great conversation. We pretty much a very tight, closed set, and being able to operate gave me the opportunity to really be there in that intimate moment where it's just the three of us. And what I really enjoyed was, even though we were so technical, and we clarified every single step, every hand placement, every foot placement, every grab, choke, smother, right? We talked about it, and then you see it, and it feels as organic as you told that story. And so I'm very proud of you and Isaiah for going on that journey and for having me a part of that.
Yeah,
so
listen, the choreography for that was it was a lot of work, and just watching y'all like work around it and just figure out what was going to feel authentic, but also just be safe and comfortable for both of the actors, was a huge role in like making it successful. So, way to start off the episode.
I know, yeah, that was my first sex scene, so I was, I was terrified.
Yeah.
But, getting through it with AJ, even Alscott, making sure the set was closed. I appreciate everyone's contribution for that.
yeah.
So we started off with a bang, and then next thing we know, I don't have a job, you don't have a job. I got fired.
Yeah, wow.
When that happened and I told you, you were like super, super surprised by it. Why do you think your character was so surprised?
I think out of the friendship, you're the more serious one. You're independent. You take care of things. I'm probably coming to you to take care of things for me. And I know I'm just here just to be here. I'm fucking while I'm literally on a call. I don't care about this job, and I have my mom taking care of me. So,
Right.
And Chad's character doesn't. So when he's fired, I'm just like, oh, like, this is real. Like, they just fired a good person. And I think that's why I jumped into, like, you need to sue them, and you need to, like...
Yeah. It's so funny because when we first started writing this, originally Chad was planning to quit. Dion quit first, and Chad was planning to quit. And when he went in to quit, they was like, actually, you can just go. And then I got fired in real life, and we like rewrote it and was like, let's actually make him get fired immediately. And so it really changed the structure of the show, but it also left a gap in the show, which is how we came to like rewrite the last 2 scenes.
And I think what's exciting about that is the rewrites on this show. When those pages like fly in and you go, okay, scrap it. Let's really re-examine what we're doing here. It's always something I'm not expecting, you know, and it's always something where I'm like, wow, we found a new way into vulnerability. And that's exciting. Because sometimes you feel like, oh, it's plot. And it's like, no. This is really authentic. It's like, we've got to keep the voice on track. And that's so, again, it goes back to that rhythm, right? And the tempo, and it's like, okay, now we're elevating this, and now we're bringing these down. But being able to do that as quickly as you all did, in the midst of, you know, maneuvering through these pages, and as writers, as producers, and then as the actors, all while still being like, all right, camera's up. Hats off. I won't take my hat off now, but you know. But it was exciting, and I remember even when I saw the new pages, I said, oh, okay. And then I had to get creative too now to reshift how we're going to show this.
It's like,
scene.
oh, all these pages, huh? Woo, this is a lot to shoot, but I love it.
It was exciting. And again, too, for you to be able to hold your own in stepping into like, okay, now I've got to switch this hat off. And I appreciate the trust that we had to maneuver into so quickly.
When we see the moments after like us getting fired and we're at the house and you decide to quit, it's just like so beautifully shot that you, while you're cussing this lady out, it's like, oh, it looks great while he's cussing her out. I'm curious why you decided to like quit after I quit or after I got fired.
I believe Dion decided to quit because one, he's spoiled, so he knew he could fall back on his mom. He didn't know he was going to get cut off, right? So it's just like, well, child, I'm going to be there for my friend and make him feel better. I think Dion has a big heart. He just plays too much, so that kind of overshadows his kindness.
And I think, too, to speak to that loyalty is what was so great was when we did that scene, there was such a push into it, right? Like, we really were like, okay, lights are up. We've made all these changes. Like, I think that was maybe one of the first things. It was top of production for us, I think.
And it was a rewritten scene because it originally
And we shot it already.
Yeah, and we shot
Right.
we had shot it already by ourselves before we.
Have me on board. Yeah. And so to come back to revisit that scene, and then, now mind you, we're shooting this scene with a set intention, and then the pages afterwards that come up where you get the cut off, it's like that scene just went through the roof, right? The magnitude of that scene elevated, and that's what I'm talking about with the rewrites. It's that rhythm, right? And now we see that as like, oh, that's cool, like, they're buddies. And then you're like, oh, wait, that was a dumbass move. like, oh, that was cute in the moment, like one too many sips. And then you're like, oh, this shit is for real. Yeah. You know, but again, that's one of those beautiful moments where not knowing what that rewrite would be, but, you know, and I'm sure there's a level of subconscious magic that happens there where you just go, how do we elevate that? But I think that, again, that push for authenticity, that push for the truth is why this works. This is why you can have a rewrite and the show still stays intact. A lot of people do rewrites and they've got to race back and start from scratch.
Yeah.
And this was just continual progress. And I think that's what's also really exciting.
It's clear from Santee Valley that we have very different family lives. Like, your family, or your mom rather, owns this big old dog food company, Dog Cuisine, Canine Cuisine.
Hey,
and my family, we don't really know what they do, but we do know that they're not there for me in a way that your family is, mostly financially. And I think that was just interesting to explore, like, as someone who has come from a family that has been very supportive, more so recently than when I was like in my early 20s, where I was very hyper independent. I can do it all by myself, with reason. But it's just so interesting, like, seeing that dynamic play out on screen and wondering why in that moment, like, your mom would cut you off. Like, is there some underlying things that we need to know about Dion that may have forced that? Was it quitting the job? What do you think?
No, I definitely think Dion is, one, spoiled. He's done this before. Whether it's in college, whether it's like, hey, you need to have, you know, a job, and if he gets tired of something, I see him just quitting it. Yeah. You know, so when it came to him quitting this job this last time for no reason, I think his mom was like, okay, it's time to teach you a lesson. It's
Mm-hmm.
time,
Right.
mother bird, it's time to come in, and you're done.
Right.
You're done. So, and it's so crazy. It was actually hard to play this role and like understand that because I'm the head of my household essentially. Like all my life, like I've always been the one that's financial. So I've had the support from my mom. Love you, mom. But financially, I had to be a go-getter. So it was interesting, like being spoiled because I'm
Yeah, you
not
got to be the
spoiled.
spoiled brat.
Yeah,
right,
never
right.
been there. I'm the oldest, so
Right, being able to play out that little fantasy, like
Yeah.
low key, like,
Yeah.
and just speaking about shooting Santiali, I remember when you said it. I don't remember if we were in person or not, but I definitely took a beat. And I was like,
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
very busy. It's
Very
very
busy.
busy, and we went and tried to like map out a way for it to not be as busy, and then we realized it was actually just as busy,
Yeah.
and so we ended up finding another like place and just going for it.
and what was exciting too for me with that was like you finally see the space, and you're like, oh, okay, cool. Like all of the possibilities collide and they come together, and then I think too, even our initial excitement for how to move forward with that new story, right? The new way to lock this up. I was like, okay, wow, we're really raising the stakes, not just in front of the camera, but behind it. And that challenge for me was exciting.
for the first episode, I felt like Chad is trying to convince Dion to start this business.
Yeah, I mean that's my goal.
Exactly.
I mean, granted, it was Dion who dropped the idea and was like, maybe you should. Whether or not he knew it, he like planted the seed, and it just kind of became this thing. I think it's interesting though that knowing that he doesn't have a job or any money, that he's willing to do all of these things to convince his friend to like go in all in on this business. But it's exciting to see, and I'm very excited to see their journey.
Why do you think Chad trusts Dion in that way?
I think that because they're best friends, and I think there's a level of trust that comes with that. Sometimes to the detriment of people where they're too trusting. I also think that based on their friendship, I don't think that they've ever steered each other wrong, if that makes sense. Like they've done things because friendships aren't perfect. So I feel like he trusts him, but there's also this underlying thing that Dion always does where he has these moments that his decisions are not just rooted in what is happening at the surface, but often what's happening underneath. And so once he got cut off, before he was like pretty adamant about, I'll think about it, but it was one of those think about it of like, girl, I'm not really gonna think about it.
Exactly.
Until he got cut off, and then it's just kind of like, oh, like this
Have to.
actually might be my livelihood as well, so let
need
me
to get
get
with
in
it.
where I fit in. And so I just think that was interesting. Yeah.
My name is Rodney Hawkins Jr. Thank you for tuning in to the after show of Transplants. We'll see you next week.